It's March 31st, 2018, and Steve Delia is continuing his series of interviews with poets. Today, Steve's guest is poet, singer-songwriter Eileen D'Angelo. A delightful and vibrant presence on the Philadelphia area poetry scene, Eileen is founder of Arts Against Abuse, has served as president of the Philadelphia Writers Conference, and as director of the Mad Poets Society. Since 1987, Eileen has introduced many people to poetry and many poets to the public.
Hey Eileen.
Hey Steve.
Thanks for doing this interview.
This is a kick.
When I did the interview several years ago on the cassette, I tried to get you, and I never did.
I know.
So now you're going to pay.
I know that.
I always start with the question, how did you get into poetry? When did it all begin for you?
That's funny because I was really young. I didn't really know I was getting into poetry. I wrote a poem, I guess I was 4, and I saw A Night to Remember. I don't know if anybody remembers that. That's an old one. But I was blown away by the Titanic going down, and I wrote a 3-page poem about it, a rhyme poem about it.
I know you know what all the forms are because we've talked about it, but you yourself don't write too much form poetry, do you?
I think the poem tells you what it's going to do. I've been trying to do a poem for a long time, and still, I think you might even have it, but I won't read it because I'm not happy with it, you know. But it's a villanelle for my mother, and that poem, I can't say what I'm trying to say in that poem without being in that form. And I don't know why. It just keeps in my head this rhythm and rhyme, and it's got to be this villanelle. And because there's repeating lines that I have to say, so I'm looking for the form that does it, and that's the one. But you want it to be as smooth and as artful as possible because you don't want to draw attention to the fact that it's in that form.
If you read a poem with a particular form at a reading, do you announce this is a villanelle or this
Not unless it's in the title.
Not unless
Yeah, I don't say. Unless I know it's mostly poets because poets appreciate things like that. Like, so if I think it's all poets, I'll say, you know what, this is a terzarima or whatever. And so because, you know, everybody's going to say, okay, well, I might want to fool with that. What's that do? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe I'll want to throw my words into something like that. Because sometimes I think what's great about form is it's an unblocker. It's like a puzzle. You know, so you've got this pile of words over here, and you lose that urge where it's pouring onto the page. You're still working it because of the form. You know what I mean? And then the words will come. Like sometimes I dump everything that's in my brain on a page, and my problem is trying to get all the noise words out and figure out what has to stay. And that's how I do it. A lot of poets go the other way. That was examined by somebody who wrote a thesis on called Philadelphia, going through poets in the area and asking them how they created, whether they took everything and put it on a page, or whether they built small and then fleshed things out. And it was interesting how many different people. Bill Earhart was in that. I was interviewed for that. Nat Anderson, and it was interesting because the people who had a lot of formal training and education seemed to do it where they started small and worked their way out. Isn't that interesting?
But you start big and work your way down. So like a sculptor, you're finding the
It's funny you should say that because I used to say it's like ice sculpting. Like you just see the block of ice right now.
Right.
And it's all fitting in there. And there's a poem in there. And you've got to start carving away at it bit by bit until you see what it is you're trying to say. And so it is. I used to think of it as ice sculpting. It's so funny.
You were involved in a project called The Wild Women. And tell us about that. I do remember your performance at the Fringe Festival, which was very cool. And how did you work all that out?
It started out when you call them the Delco girls. The 3 Delco girls.
3 Delco girls.
Were running the band Poets, which was Delco Poets at the time. And that's when that started, because I don't know where I picked it up, but it was before it became a thing on cups, Wild Women. I used to call Janet Sadler the Wild Woman, and just that's kind of where it started. And then it started to be everybody, so my close friends say, hey, Wild Woman, And so Janet was the original Wild Woman, and it was just like a nickname for her until I realized that we were all reading together. It was at the South Street Arts Festival. A bunch of us were reading together, and then I said, look, the Wild Women are reading, And it was kind of like, wow, we should bill us as Wild Women whenever we read together. And then we decided to add people to the group. But it was originally Janet and me, and Veronica came a little later. We did a performance, and then we didn't. And then I was talking to Veronica and said, this would be fabulous if we could get women from all different generations. We'll get someone young. At the time, it was Autumn. She was just out of college or going to college or something.
And
so,
she's still the youngest to this day.
Yeah. How about that? Yeah. So it was like, everybody was a different decade, and so
I didn't know that.
it was pretty interesting. So it was women, it was our viewpoints from different decades. We wanted to try and mix every kind of art that we could think of. We had Veronica with painting. Whatever other multifaceted part of being an artist you were, that's what you tried to bring into it. So I played a little guitar, everybody, Autumn did a film strip. So everybody got their...
Yeah, I got to scream at Missy and
Yes, you
throw
did.
a pie at everybody.
Everybody got their message across.
That's exactly right. In whatever
That's
form
good.
we felt
Expressing that
most
is important.
But that was a good
able to do
project.
so. But that was a lot of fun.